Every website can be split up into two parts, the front end and the back end. The front end is all the visual stuff you see on the web page, the images, the text, the buttons, and the back end is what saves and manages your data, for example, your Amazon order history. In this video, I'm going to explain all the technologies that are used in the front end of a web application, and in another video, we'll explore the back end. Let's get started. We're going to start with a blank web page, and the first technology we're going to look at is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language and is used to add content to our web page. For example, I can write this bit of HTML to add a button. I can also add other types of content like images and text. And if I write more HTML, it will add more content to my page. But you'll notice that our page doesn't look very good. That's where CSS comes in. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And based on the name, it's used to style our web page. So it's used to make our web page look good by letting us adjust colors, sizes, spacing, things like that. Let's add some CSS to our page. So now that looks much better, but we're not done here. Let's say that I want to filter these products and only show one brand of shoes. So I click this checkbox. But you'll notice that nothing happens. And this is where JavaScript comes in. HTML and CSS only display things on our web page, but JavaScript is what makes our web page interactive. So for example, when we click something and type something, a bit of JavaScript code will update the page based on what we did. The most important feature of JavaScript is something called the Document Object Model, or the DOM. The DOM allows JavaScript to change the web page. For example, this bit of JavaScript code uses the DOM to change the text in the button. And this is how JavaScript makes pages interactive. However, using the DOM directly like this is really repetitive and hard to manage. And that's why we use a JavaScript framework. JavaScript frameworks give us a much nicer way to create our web page, and they take care of updating the page for us, so we never use the DOM directly anymore. The most popular ones are React.js, Angular, and Vue.js. Now let's take a step back and look at JavaScript again. JavaScript as a language is missing a lot of features that other programming languages have. One of these features is being able to split up our code into different files and to organize our code. To solve this, we had to use something called a bundler. The most popular one you've probably heard of is called Webpack. Webpack lets us split up our JavaScript code into many different files, and once we're ready to put it on our website, Webpack will combine all of these files or bundle all of these files into one JavaScript file that we can put on our website. Another tool that we use is called a transpiler. The most popular one you've probably heard of is called TypeScript. A transpiler adds extra features onto JavaScript. It lets us write an enhanced version of JavaScript, and then once we're done, it will transform the enhanced JavaScript back into normal JavaScript, because browsers like Google Chrome can only understand normal JavaScript. So those are the major technologies in the JavaScript world. Now we're going to move over to CSS. CSS as a language has the same problems as JavaScript. We can't organize our code into different files, and CSS is missing a lot of useful features. So we also use a bundler and a transpiler for CSS. There's a special name for this called a CSS preprocessor. It's basically the combination of a bundler and a transpiler. The most popular CSS preprocessor you've probably heard of is called Sass. Sass lets us organize our CSS into different files, and it lets us write enhanced CSS. And then it will bundle all of those files together into one file, and it will transform the enhanced CSS back into normal CSS. So you can think of it sort of like a bundler and a transpiler combined. Now, once we had CSS preprocessors, developers started to create CSS frameworks, the most popular one being Bootstrap. CSS frameworks are basically a whole bunch of CSS code that someone else wrote, and it helps us solve common problems. So using a framework like Bootstrap saves us a lot of time. The last thing we're going to look at is how does the front end communicate with the back end. For example, let's say I'm on Amazon and I want to make an order. How does this order get sent from my computer to Amazon? JavaScript has a feature for this too, called XML HTTP request. It lets us send a message. In this case, we're going to send our Amazon order to a URL like amazon.com/create order. On the other side, Amazon's backend is listening for these messages sent to this URL, and that's how they get our order. We're going to talk more about this process in our backend video that you can find in the description. Over the years, we've improved on XML HTTP request, and these days we use tools like Axios or Fetch to send messages to the backend. Alright, so these are all the technologies we need to build the front end. You'll notice that it's really just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The other technologies make CSS and JavaScript easier to work with. Let me know in the comments how many of these technologies you